Just when you thought you knew the story of Hansel and Gretel, they remake it again and switch the names? This is 2020's Gretel and Hansel. Warning, spoilers ahead. We start by listening to the witch warn us that she's about to tell the story of a child that might save our life sometime. A girl was born to her parents during a time of great suffering, and all of the villagers agreed that she was the most beautiful child. Yet she got ill, and it looked like she wouldn't be able to survive her first winter. Her father wouldn't stand for that though, and he took her to an enchantress on the hill who told him to trust the darkness. When the enchantress took away the illness, she left the child second sight. Everyone in town came to her for answers, but it eventually became clear that she had other powers too. No one could escape her powers though, and she even had her own father swallow a burning rod. So of course the town decided to leave her in the woods, because abandoning children never turns out bad for people, especially ones with dark powers like this. The girl wasn't helpless though. She drew the children to her with powers, and with that, the witch warns us to be wary of those powers. Flash forward, and we meet Gretel as she walks through the woods. She shares everything with Hansel, and they get ready to meet with Master Stripp to see if he needs a housekeeper. When they arrive at the manor, Gretel assures Hansel that he'll be the first to know if she sees a crumb of cake, and she leaves him at the gate. When she meets with Master Stripp, he asks what skills she has, and she assures him that she can cook and clean. It seems to go well, until Gretel starts speaking her own mind too much. Of course, this guy's a creep. The second he asks if she's kept her virginity, I knew the interview was over. Sure enough, when she gets back home and tells her mother what happened, her mother basically kicks her out. Mother of the year. Her mother tells her to go to the convent with Hansel, but Gretel knows that they'll never have a place for him. So her mother tells her to start digging their graves. The positivity in this family is absolutely brimming. Better yet, her mother comes back to the table with an axe, and swears that she'll cut her into tiny pieces if she doesn't leave. I would happily leave at this point. Don't have to tell me twice. Gretel wakes Hansel and leaves into the woods. Hansel tells her that she should have just gone with Master Stripp, and she tells him not to talk about things he doesn't understand. She tells him that they're heading to Widow Hayes' house to ask for a bed, and they find the house empty. They crash on a bed in one of the rooms, and Hansel asks Gretel if they'll be alright. She assures him that she'll do her best to make it so. But suddenly, a figure sits up behind them and screams. The kids run out of the house, but it tackles Hansel. Gretel comes back and hits the man, and his eyeballs fall out. Suddenly, an arrow takes out the man, and the huntsman appears at the door. He welcomes the kids back inside, and he offers them a meal. After speaking with them, he tells them that he'll point them in the direction of the foresters, who will put them to work how they see fit. Gretel asks what they can give him in return for the meal, but he swears that they have nothing he needs or wants. I'd be trying to stay with him. I'll work for my way to stay. The huntsman draws them both a bath, but Gretel doesn't trust that he's just being kind. The next day, the huntsman draws out a path for them, and he warns not to sway from the path. The kids set out on their journey, and after a while, they stop so Hansel can go to the bathroom. He asks to hear the story of the beautiful child, but Gretel tells him that it's too scary for him right now. Eventually, night comes, and Hansel is terrified. Gretel thinks that she sees figures waiting just beyond the trees, and she can hear a woman calling to her. Gretel admits that she used to tell her mother about how she could see things, but her mother warned her to keep her mouth shut. Yeah, or they'll take you out into the woods and leave you like the beautiful girl in the story. Oh wait, that's exactly where they ended up. Did all children get abandoned in the woods so parents could eat? As the children keep walking, their hunger grows to the point that Gretel wonders if they can eat mushrooms they come across. She stops to ask the mushrooms if they're friendly ones, and they chow down on them. In no time at all, the children are tripping, and Gretel starts following a child's voice that calls out to her. Soon they come across a house, and Hansel can smell cake and bacon. Against Gretel's better judgment, they get closer. She looks in through the window and finds a magnificent feast laid out on the table. Hansel opens the window enough to climb inside, and he starts snatching food to take back to Gretel. Suddenly, the witch appears and takes Hansel. Gretel tries to break her way in, but nothing seems to work. Just then, the witch comes out with Hansel, and she invites Gretel inside to join them at the table. As the witch asks Gretel some questions, she plucks a hair from Hansel's head, and she tells them to eat and rest on beds that she'll make up for them. Gretel tries to tell her that they're just stopping by for a moment to rest, and they'll be on their way. She's hesitant to partake in the food, but eventually she can't help herself. That night, Gretel dreams of being in Master Stripp's manor again, but this time there's a hooded figure sitting across from her. Gretel makes her way around the house following another figure, but children appear behind her to try and warn her against reaching out to the hooded child's bonnet. Then the head slides off, and Gretel wakes up like she didn't just have a terrifying dream. Suddenly, the witch calls the children to breakfast, and Gretel offers her services in exchange for the witch's generosity. The witch gives Gretel a tour of the pantry, and she takes Hansel outside to show him how to sharpen an axe. Hansel seems drawn towards the shed, and he doesn't notice the witch sniffing him. Inside, Gretel starts dusting some of the witch's trinkets, and she sneezes. The witch notices that something is ailing her, and she shows her how she makes medicine from her book. Gretel's hesitant at first, but the witch assures her that she'll feel better soon enough. Meanwhile, Hansel's outside trying to cut down the biggest tree possible with the world's smallest hatchet. He's ambitious, but I don't imagine that he'll be earning his keep anytime soon. In fact, he just leaves the axe stuck in a tree. That evening, the witch teaches the children how to play chess, and she warns that women know more than they should at times. That comment seems to resonate with Gretel. And that night in bed, Gretel is plagued by visions of children behind the wall. She follows them into a secret room downstairs, and they warn her not to look at them. Suddenly, a table appears with bodies laying on them. And what does Gretel start to do? As the children whisper over and over not to look at them, she literally starts pulling the curtain off of them. Stop ignoring directions! Just then, she wakes up back in her bed, and she goes to the creek to wash up. She follows her intuition, and she comes to a slab outside the house. When she knocks on it, something seems to knock back quietly. When she goes inside, she wakes up Hansel, and she tells him that they should think about leaving and going back on their way. Hansel doesn't want to leave the food and bed, but Gretel thinks that something bad is going on here. Gretel questions where the witch gets all of her meat and vegetables, since she doesn't see a garden or farm. But the witch leaves her wondering. Later, Hansel goes back to chopping wood, and he actually cuts down his first tree. Then he decides to wander for a bit, but inside, Gretel starts to hallucinate a bit. She's the older sibling, I'd definitely just grab Hansel and go. She doesn't need his permission to leave. Gretel heads to the closet to get more supplies, but she notices something behind the wood wall. When she picks some of the wall away, she finds a doorknob, but she's called back by the witch. In the woods, Hansel comes across a sigil on one of the trees, but then he sees a witch taunting him to go into the shed. Inside, the witch asks Gretel if she has dreams, and she tells Gretel that she has a power that sleeps within her. She passes a salve to her, and Gretel tests what she means. The witch tells Gretel to tell the staff to do something, and Gretel manages to stand it up through her thoughts. Imagine being told that you can do magic by this witch instead of Hagrid. Major disappointment. Outside, Hansel sharpens the saws, and the voice of the witch tells him that it's for the bones of the dead. Soon, Gretel comes out to the woods to test her new power, and she speaks with nature. She manipulates the giant trees, and that night, the children sit for dinner. Eventually, Hansel refuses to eat another bite, and he seems to be sick to his stomach. When they lay down, Hansel asks Gretel what she did with the witch all day, but he seems jealous and scared of being here now. He doesn't understand why Gretel isn't suspicious anymore, but she tells him to shut his mouth. When he doesn't do as she tells him, she escorts him outside and tells him that he can leave whenever he wants. A little bit of power and understanding, and Gretel is basically just as bad as her mother now. And there goes Hansel being called by the witch. When Gretel wakes up, she thinks that it might have been a dream, but she finds that Hansel's bed is still empty. When she looks outside, she sees a figure walking away from the house, and she decides to follow after it. She loses sight of it, and in the morning she sits with the witch to tell her that she's worried about Hansel. The witch tells her that he's probably out sulking, but she shouldn't be burdened by him since she's not his mother. By nightfall, Hansel is still gone, and Gretel tells the witch that she'll be up early in the morning to search for him. She asks for a sleeping draft so that she can sleep well, and the witch warns that it will come with side effects. Gretel downs it without a second thought and goes to bed. That was all just an act. She throws it up and goes into the little Alice in Wonderland door in the closet. Whoever designed this house did a phenomenal job. The hidden square footage in it is crazy. When Gretel goes through the door, she takes a long stairway down to a lower level where she finds Hansel sitting in a corner. Something's wrong with him though. Just then, she notices a dark substance pooling on the floor, and it forms a woman covered in runic tattoos. Okay, quick version of what's going on here. The woman takes organs and child's body parts and turns it into food. Well, that answers Gretel's question from earlier. That was also the witch in her newer form. In the morning, Gretel tries to play dumb and she doesn't tell the witch about finding Hansel either. The witch goes out to handle some business in the woods, and Gretel goes to her book. The witch digs a hole and vomits into it, which somehow turns her into her younger self, and she notices children's dolls nailed to a tree. When she gets back home, she's in her older state, and Gretel has a cup of tea prepared for her. The witch tells Gretel that it's better that Hansel isn't with them, because he'll grow to fear what power she has. Gretel asks if she'll be very powerful one day, and the witch assures her that she will. When Gretel asks if the witch has a weakness, she tells her that the only way to overcome the weakness is to embrace it. Then she takes a big bite out of some food on the table and pulls a big wad of hair out. Oh, well, can't unsee that now, can we? To top that off, there's no hiding anything now. Gretel asks the witch what she's done with Hansel, and she tells Gretel that she simply removed him from her path so she can focus on becoming what she was meant to be. She reminds Gretel that she's still free to choose which path to follow. Gretel tells her to do what she wants with her, but she has to free Hansel first. The witch tells her that she can't do that because Hansel is Gretel's weakness, and she plans to turn him into their next meal. The witch wishes that she had the chances that Gretel has now, but it's past time for that. She downs the cup of tea, and she compliments Gretel for trying to put sleepy ingredients in her tea. Now the story starts connecting though. About time too. The witch admits that she's the reason that Gretel knows about the story of the beautiful girl that was sent to the woods, because it's part of her story. She opens up about how they share the same gift, and this piques Gretel's curiosity. The witch points out that she's been telling the story wrong though. While the girl was beautiful on the outside, she was rotten to the core. And the witch was her mother. Well, that definitely changes the dynamic. This little girl is evil incarnate, but the witch quickly takes that crown by eating her own children. So there's a little bit of the original story that we all know and love. Gretel is transported to the downstairs room, and she finds that she's cuffed to the table. The witch explains that this is her chance to be rid of Hansel and to embrace her powers like she did. The witch starts the fire, and she moves the curtain to reveal her true self and Hansel waiting. She has Hansel kiss Gretel one last time, and Gretel promises to see him again once she frees him from this curse. As the witch leads Hansel to his doom, Gretel rubs some salve on her fingers, and she calls the staff to do her bidding. She pins the witch over the flames, and they engulf her in a blue flame. Once the witch is finished, Hansel comes out of his trance and Gretel frees herself. Whose house is that now? Yeah, I'd claim it too. She's got the power and her brother. That's a win-win. Gretel has Hansel rest in the bed upstairs, and she tells him that he's to leave once he's rested. She explains that his path will lead him to what he needs to find in life, and hers has already led her here. Later, Gretel sends Hansel off with a horse, and she turns back to the house. Hansel rides back to his mother's house, and he finds it empty. He takes the axe from the table and goes on his own path. Meanwhile, Gretel decides to use her power, but she plans to use light to feed it instead of darkness. The souls of the children the witch had eaten were finally free to go rest, and Gretel notices that her fingers have the same shade of black that the witch had. Then, the credits roll. This was definitely an interesting take on a classic fairy tale, and it's probably a more acquired taste for some viewers. Give it a shot though. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.